Tim Weninger is an assistant professor of the University of Notre Dame, where he directs the data science group and is a member of the Interdisciplinary Center for Network Science and Applications. He's authored more than 60 research publications in the area of social media, machine learning, and network science. The key application of his research is to identify how humans generate, curate, and search for information in the pursuit of knowledge. He uses properties of these emergent networks to reason about the nature of relatedness, membership, and other abstract and physical phenomena. He's a member of the ACM's Future of Computing Academy, serves on numerous scientific programs, committees, and boards. Many of you may have seen a video involving Dr. Weninger. For those who haven't, let's watch.
Falsehood flies, and the truth comes limping after. Jonathan Swift wrote those words in 1710. They are as relevant now as ever. In 2012, I started studying how ISIS was using social media to recruit terrorists.
Many are recruited through a powerful online campaign.
Fast and digital.
Using social media to recruit and inspire.
I wrote a letter to the Air Force warning them how other foreign actors could manipulate social media to spread misinformation and influence our electoral process. I was hoping I would be wrong.
Illegally using social media and disrupt the 2016...
Defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare.
Frankly, the United States is under attack.
In collaboration with DARPA, the research division of the United States Department of Defense, Notre Dame professor Tim Weninger is working to combat the spread of misinformation and state-sponsored propaganda.
The work we're doing at Notre Dame focuses on finding the vulnerabilities within the algorithms of social media platforms, and then developing technologies to safeguard them against manipulation.
Tim is on the very cutting edge of research in online social behavior. He is a great example of someone who thinks not just about the technology, not just about the science, but what does it actually mean? How is it going to change how we live and act every day?
The scary thing about the age of social media is the speed and the scale at which misinformation spreads. We've seen it incite mob violence in India and sway elections from the UK to America. This is a technology problem. Engineers help create it, but we can also help solve it. And we must, because the future of our democracy and our society depend upon it.
The University of Notre Dame asks, what would you fight for?
Fighting the spread of misinformation. We are the Fighting Irish.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tim Weninger.
All right, well, thank you very much. You want to hear me? We're good? All right, so thank you for the introduction, for playing the video, introducing the work we're doing. So as the introduction stated, my name is Tim. I'm a professor of computer science and engineering here at Notre Dame. Today we're going to be talking about fact fiction in the newsfeed, is the title of the talk. And generally, what I want to talk to you guys today about is the work that we're doing here at Notre Dame with my lab and with other faculty members, and about how we're trying to understand and solve the problem of misinformation in social media and the spread of misinformation in social media. So I guess before I begin, I do want to kind of ground what we're talking about with thinking about the technology that we have in front of us, the technology that we have in our hands. It actually, I was thinking the other day about how it used to be that when we had a discussion at maybe like at dinner or something, or if my wife and my son and I are sitting around the dinner table. What's going on? Okay. We're sitting around the dinner table and we're wondering who was the third person who landed on the moon? Or the third person to walk on the moon? We might be thinking to ourselves, I don't know. And 10 years ago, we would be satisfied not knowing the answer to that question. We would be, well, I don't know, and that's the end of it. We were happy with that. That's actually changed dramatically now. We have, in the palm of our hands, complete and total access to the sum total of all human knowledge. We can reach and talk to anyone at any time, and about 4 billion people are reachable by just picking up this little device. And that, to me, is an incredible technology that enables us to do and answer and solve all sorts of wonderful problems. But it also has some drawbacks, some issues, and some of those issues that we're going to be talking about today. So I can dive right into it. The first part of my talk will be on artificial promotion in the attention economy. And so since this is the business school, I want to start off with a kind of a business example. So I, about 6 months ago, purchased a new vacuum cleaner. When I did that, hopefully you can see it here on the screen, I went to Amazon.com and I searched for vacuum cleaners. And when I did that, Amazon came back with 1,000 different results. How do I know which one I'm going to buy? So what I ended up doing, I always skip the first one because it's probably an ad. And actually, in this case, the first two are ads. So these, Amazon is telling me that someone paid to put these in front of me. And so I would see them when I search for vacuum cleaners. Now, after that, we are sorting by relevance, or by price, or by rating, or by whatever Amazon wants to give us. And when we do this, sort by default, it's by relevance. We'll see that of the 10,000 vacuum cleaners on the market, I can see these first two, or 3 or 4. And no one ever goes to the second page. So what Amazon puts in front of you on this web page drives enormous activity and enormous market share. So what does it mean by relevance? Well, in many cases, it has to be a good vacuum cleaner, and it has to be of a reasonable price, and it has to be popular. Many people have bought it before. Because Amazon makes money when it sells products. And so how does this Bissell and this Dirt Devil make it to the top? Well, it could be because, partially, it received good ratings. 9,000 people gave this 4 stars. And 11,000 people gave this second one, on average, 4 stars. Now, what can often happen is that Dirt Devil, Bissell, Hoover, they all understand that Amazon is a huge driver of their sales. And they understand that the relevance on Amazon is driven by these rating systems. So what do? Well, they could spend $100,000 or $200,000 to develop a commercial, to call NBC or CBS and have this national campaign. Or they could try their best to manipulate those stars, to maybe pay 100 people $1 or 10,000 people $1. It costs $10,000 to go to Amazon.com and click 5 stars and leave a rating. Maybe they bought the vacuum cleaner, maybe they didn't, but all they have to do is go on and say they did. Now, Amazon knows that this is a thing, and they have a vested financial interest in providing a good product to their customers. And so Amazon has an entire team of people, thousands of people, who are dedicated and devoted of finding and rooting out this type of rating spam, we call it. And so they do a pretty good job, and now we have these things now called certified reviews, where we know this person actually purchased the product and gave a 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 star review. Right? And that's because Amazon has, like I said, a rooted vested interest in doing this, which is great. On the other hand, we have Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit that are competing, that share posts that are competing for your attention. You look at Facebook and you look at Twitter, and what is put in front of you is decided by some algorithm based on relevance. Upvotes, likes, stars, shares, retweets, what is popular is determined by what other people say is popular. And when this type of thing happens, we can also see that people who have competing interests will try to game and manipulate the system in entirely the same way that people will try to game the Amazon system, or the Netflix system, or the YouTube system. And so here's where I come in. I study how the algorithms that drive these systems can be gamed, how they can be manipulated, and what we can do to try to stop that kind of manipulation. So first, I want to say that here's kind of how it works. You can start with some news and opinion or facts, some that are accurate, some that are not accurate, some that drive conservative opinion versus liberal opinion, versus maybe some that drive by Hoover versus by Dirt Devil versus by Bissell. Right? And then they'll submit these to Reddit or Dig or Slashdot or Facebook or Twitter. You can tell this is a really old graphic, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then what will happen is that regular people will go, and based on the quality and the merits of the article, they'll upvote it or share it or retweet it. And then sometimes we can have malicious individuals who will go and downvote the good stuff, upvote the bad stuff, and hopefully make an impact to drive the misinformation in front of people. And when you do that, you can get people to maybe change their minds. After all, advertising works, some of it at least. And so in this case, getting the information that you want in front of people, that's the goal, that's the task. Now, like I said before, this is what I call an influence attack. And this was put together in 2013. And it was put together in response to the rise of ISIS. And what ended up happening is that in Syria, we found that there was about 300 people in a building, and their job was to upvote, like and share and retweet the pro-ISIS stuff, downvote the pro-Western stuff. And that was their only job. And so we started studying, what are they doing, how are they doing it, and are they being effective? And it turns out they were being extraordinarily effective. ISIS went from a few hundred people to tens of thousands of people based on these social media campaigns. They were extremely good at recruiting on social media. So what we ended up doing, by the way, I just love this image. I have no other reason of putting this image other than I really like it. This was from the royal wedding, where everyone's on their phone trying to record some event, and there's this young woman in the middle who's just enjoying life. Anyway, so kind of the first chapter is to study the social news manipulation. We're talking about the creation and spread of misinformation and how votes can be used to spread misinformation, especially malicious votes. So what we ended up doing, what we wanted to do, is we said, this is back in 2013, where I said that foreign PSYOPs groups are actively manipulating votes and ratings in social media platforms and therefore may be actively manipulating Western public opinion. So based on these developments, we will, and what we did, I'll talk about in the next few minutes. This was sent to the Air Force and the Department of Defense, and the Air Force gave Notre Dame $500,000 to try to figure this out. It wasn't enough money, basically. So what we found, well, what we did was we started with this experiment. And this was called it's a randomized in vivo experiment. For those of you who might be economists or sociologists in the room might recognize some of these words. But what we did is we went onto social media platforms and we upvoted and downvoted, or did nothing as a control, random things every 2 minutes for about 3 months. We ended up getting 93,000 total vote manipulations, vote injections on a real live website. And we waited a few days after we did that to see how much impact did that vote have. If I upvoted you, did you become trending? If I downvoted you, were you buried? If I did nothing, and how was that compared to if I did nothing? So the experiment we ran for a few months, and the results are pretty stark. So if I upvoted you, you received on average 3 or 4 more votes than normal, which is not a big deal. But this is where averages get kind of in the way of the actual data. Now, if you posted a comment, like on Reddit or on Twitter, you comment on something. And if I downvote your comment, it has a huge effect. But if I upvote your comment, no big deal. But posts are really the important thing. And the average vote total's no big deal. What we really care about is the trendiness, the front page. If I upvote you, especially early on, what is the likelihood that you'll reach the front page? And is it any different? And we found that if I upvote you, you're 25% more likely to become trending. And that's just a single vote. One vote, early on, you were 25% more likely to become trending or reach the front page than if I did nothing at all, which to me is remarkable. It's amazing how much your vote individually has on the eventual outcome of some social media post. Now, why is this the case? It actually turns out there's a consistent theory kind of starting to emerge, and it has to do, it's called the visibility bias. It's also called the theory of cumulative advantage, the richer get richer effect, or sometimes the Matthew effect. And since we're at Notre Dame, this is a Catholic school, let's focus on the Matthew effect. Why do we call it the Matthew effect? From the parable of the talents. To everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance, is the Matthew effect. Right? If I upvote you, it will rise in the rating system to become more relevant to everyone else. More people will see it, more people have a chance to upvote it, and then more people will or won't, and that will accumulate into a trending post. So this is the experiment we ran. But what we did in this case was just a single vote. Imagine if I had 2 people. The ethics board wouldn't let me do that. Or 3. Or a group of 300 in a building in Syria. How much damage could we do? I couldn't do it, but I did work with, I consulted with a couple of investigative journalists. And what they wanted to do is they had a few $100s, and they wanted to see how many votes that they could buy. There's actually these marketplaces that exist out where you can actually go there right now. I won't tell you where it is, but if you go there right now, you'll see things like, please leave a 5-star rating on my Amazon marketplace and give and the words they use is interesting. They say give a 5-star review and a skeptical but positive review. Skeptical but positive is an interesting word, but that's the language they use when they're trying to buy these votes. So what these people did is they went to that marketplace and bought some votes. And we talked about it a little bit in a TED Talk I gave a few years ago, but I wanted to, I should say, this has happened 2 years ago now during the Brexit, and so this was the fake news article that they were trying to share. So I will have him tell you about it, if I can.
A couple of weeks ago, we got 2 made-up stories onto the front page of Reddit for less than $200. Reddit is the 25th most popular website in the world. In the United States, it's the 11th most popular website. In fact, it gets about 230 million unique visitors every month. And for the people that do use it, they check back regularly each day. The idea behind Reddit is simple. Create a community around a particular topic, then submit stories and upvote the good ones and downvote the bad ones. The discussion section works in the exact same way. Upvote insightful comments and downvote the spammers. This system provides news and information for thousands of news blogs and websites all over the internet. It's so influential, it even attracts top celebrities, academics, and even the president. And with so many people taking part in these conversations every day, its influence is actually felt in the real world. Take Bernie Sanders, for example. His unpredictable rise can largely be attributed to Reddit. With so much influence, should we be surprised that people are trying to game the website for their own benefit?
I have, for the past 6, maybe 7 months, been actively manipulating what you all see and hear in the news.
In general, Redditors trust that their system of upvoting and downvoting protects their conversations from outside influence. But that trust in their content makes them a powerful target for advertisers and any external organization with a particular agenda. Some Redditors have started to suspect that external influences are having an effect on the conversation.
Specifically, what I've been studying is a website called Reddit, and I wrote a computer program. Every 2 minutes, goes to reddit.com, gets the most recent post, and randomly, without looking at the title, I upvote it or I downvote it. The results are pretty astounding. If I were to upvote something initially, the final score, on average, is quite a bit higher than the average score for any post. If I downvote something initially, then the average score is much, much lower than if I would have done nothing at all. Again, this is just one small nudge, one tiny push, and I can change what happens online.
So could a company get organized and start to have an impact on the news that gets through to our newsfeed each morning? Me and Tim caught up via Skype.
It only takes 3 or 4 or 5 votes to have a sizable impact. And so if you can control 3 or 5 votes, that is, if you have 5 people working in some firm, then that can do a lot of work.
It seems incredible, but Tim's research shows that just a small number of accounts can have a massive impact on these subreddits. And this exact scenario actually played out in the Bitcoin subreddit. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that has ambitions to replace the cash in our wallet. And we spoke to the moderator of the subreddit, Bashko. He told us that people supportive of Bitcoin's vision were being automatically downvoted every single time they posted. And for Redditors that were critical of Bitcoin's vision, they were being automatically upvoted. All of the usernames you can see here have been targeted in an automated attack. We were impressed with Bashko's research and we were impressed with Tim's research, but we wanted to test it ourselves. So we started an investigation to see how easy it would be to buy fake Reddit accounts.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for answering my call. So I believe that you sell Reddit accounts. Is that true?
Yes.
Great. So where do you buy your accounts from? I'm interested to know.
I have different platforms like Black Hat World, some from Bitcoin form.
Which are the best accounts I can buy from you?
It depends on your work. If you want to post in a video subreddit, little strong.
Yeah.
If you want to post in a news subreddit,
Yeah.
world, then you need more strong.
Thank you so much for helping me understand how it works.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Easy as that. In less than an hour, we'd bought multiple fake accounts and hundreds of upvotes for less than $200. Now we needed a story. So we faked up a character, Espen Lund. He's a professor of economics from a Norwegian university. And we submitted a terrible, factually inaccurate story to Medium. We submitted the story to Reddit United Kingdom with our fake accounts and used upvotes to get it to hit the front page. We'd made a positive case for Brexit and started a conversation about that topic on the UK subreddit. The headline stayed in its high position for a number of hours, and Tim Weninger explained to us why this is important.
Unless the post is removed by the volunteer moderators, the fake headline will remain. Very few Reddit users actually click through to read the article, and even fewer read the comment section. Most Reddit users are headline browsers. In the socio-digital media movement, headline visibility is key. Votes influence the ranking, which dictates the visibility of a post. Highly visible posts attract more votes, which further increases the ranking and visibility.
Our first attempt had been successful, but what about if we went after a bigger?
So they went after a bigger fish, and the video continues for a few more minutes, but I don't want to, I can kind of get to the punchline. They went and they created a video for Narcos 3, which is a Netflix series. Have anyone seen Narcos season 3? No, you haven't, because Narcos season 3 doesn't exist. But we still made the trailer, and there's Narcos season 2, that was fine. But we made a Narcos season 3 trailer and spent about $150, and it was trending. It was the top of our videos for about 12 hours or so. And it cost us $100 and some. So, and that's just, we were 2 for 2, and it was that easy, no big deal. So, and imagine if you were actually properly funded, had thousands of dollars and 300 people sitting, like I said, in a room in Syria, and what they could do. Now, all of this kind of made me think more, kind of a little bit into a larger context of, we assume that the things that we see on our Facebook feed or our Twitter feed or on the images we see on Reddit or videos that we see on Reddit are all, the ones that are highly ranked are better in some way, have a higher quality than the ones that are not as highly ranked. So we set out to kind of discuss what is the interplay between popularity, that is the rank that it has on social media, and quality, which is kind of hard to define. Quality meaning, if we all agree that a thing is good, better than something else, then it has a higher quality than something else. So what we ended up doing is we ran an experiment. We called this experiment Guess the Karma. And what we ended up doing is we took 2 pictures from Reddit, or sometimes from Twitter, or sometimes from Imager. Imager is another social media website that you can put images on too. And one, in this case, is an example. One is a dog with a headline, and one is a cat. And this was submitted to Reddit from the Awe subreddit in this particular case. And we asked people, this was a game, so we said, kind of like a BuzzFeed headline where we said, it was a quiz, how many can you guess? And we got about 100,000 people to play this game. And it was, which was more popular, was the question we asked. One on the left or the one on the right? And then we also asked people, which one do you prefer? As the idea of which one is better quality, which one is a better object. And if they were wrong, then we counted it wrong and we took them to the next question. And if they're right, we said, congratulations, you got it right, and on to the next question. We did this 10 times and we aggregated all the results. So how well did people do? How well did, if this post over here, the one on the left, has 500 votes and the one over here has 20 votes, how often can the person tell that can they pick the right answer? And again, random choice, if you just had a blindfold and picked randomly, it would be 50% accuracy, right? That makes sense. So have a guess in your mind, how well do you think people did? And you're wrong. So 50%, but 52% is how well people did. So what this is telling us is that what people think ought to be popular is more often than not divorced from what actually becomes popular online. So there is almost no correlation between popularity and quality, whatever quality means, on social media, which is kind of disheartening, right? Because I assume that when I'm going to Reddit or to Facebook or to Twitter, that the things I'm seeing are better than the things I'm not seeing, or more important than the things I'm not seeing. I assume that the images that Imager gives me are of higher quality than the ones that they're not showing me. They're burying all the junk, which it turns out is just not true at all. And we did this for different, sometimes we did it for 10,000 versus 1, sometimes 1 versus 2, and different things. We found slightly different results for different things, but I won't bore you too much with the statistics. One thing I do want to ask, though, is for Reddit specifically, we asked them, how often do you use Reddit? Do you vote? Do you comment? Do things like that? And we would assume that, you know what, these Reddit power users, the ones that are always on Reddit and submit things to Reddit, are they better than the people who don't use or have never used Reddit at all? So we would assume that the power users are better at understanding what gets popular on Reddit. So we ran that experiment. We found 63 of our 10,000 people answered yes to all of the questions we asked them. They vote, they comment, they browse the new queue, they do all the things. And 122 people in our study that was posted to Reddit didn't use Reddit because we also posted it to Facebook and all around. It turns out that heavy users, the super users, were no better than non-users. So it doesn't matter if you use Reddit or not, it's hard to tell what is popular or what is a higher quality. So what does this all mean? These are all kind of disheartening results, if you ask me. This is telling us that what is popular on social media has almost no bearing to its quality. That's what that means. So there's no relationship between a post's goodness and its popularity. So what do? I've given you two problems, one with the votes and one with popularity and quality. And so I would say that we need to start recognizing these problems, the current state of social media, and understand how do we all individually use social media so that we can individually and collectively make it better. That's the goal, and that's the reason I kind of give these talks and talk about it, is to say, here are the problems, you all need to solve it. I'll do my part, but you have to do your part too. Now, when it comes to you all doing your part, we did want to study how everyone else, or how general population is browsing the social media platforms. So we ran yet another experiment. And this one is, again, I just like memes, I guess, and so I ran another experiment, and what we aimed to find out is, how does the spread of misinformation work? And what we found is that it's all our fault. Right? It's actually collectively all of our fault. So what do I mean by that? So we ran an experiment. What we did is we asked about 400 and some people, and we ended up with about 309 total, to download a plugin onto their browser, and we watched what they did on social media for a year. Every click they made, every upvote, every downvote, every like, every share, everything they did on social media. So today, I'm going to share with you the Reddit experiments because we've been talking about Reddit so far. One thing that was also really important too, especially when you're doing social media research and sociology research, is we threw away the first couple weeks of data. Because, and we actually look at the logs, we found that people remembered that they were being watched. And so they were kind of behaving differently. After a week or two, they forgot that they were being watched. And they started behaving like they normally do and going to the sites that they would normally go to. And we started collecting after a couple weeks. We collected lots of data, millions and millions of interactions, and here's what we found. We found, like I said in the video, that most people are headline browsers. And it's actually kind of interesting, if you have your phone up, right, and if you're talking to someone, my wife does this. We'll be chatting, and she'll be browsing Facebook, and she'll be kind of scrolling through the thing, right? And she'll very rarely, if ever, click on a thing. But she's scrolling, right? She's doing the scroll. And she'll talk to me. and she'll still be scrolling. It's some kind of, I don't know, right? Some kind of psychology that this is a thing that we do. And we just browse the headlines. We'll see a headline, and then, okay, that's a headline, and that's some fact that is either true or false, but that fact is what sticks in our head. We very rarely, if ever, actually click on a thing to investigate and to read the article. I know I don't. Now, sometimes we will vote, we will like, but that's actually pretty rare too. Most people don't vote ever, especially on Reddit. So we found that, I think it was, you can look at the stats here, like it was 96 or 97% of people vote in less than 10% of their interactions. That is, people almost never vote. But some people do. Now, when people do vote, this is, I think, the most surprising result. When people do vote, there's some stats here, but don't get into the weeds of it. The punchline is that when they do vote, 74 to 75% of the time, they vote without clicking on the link, or the comments, or anything. It was 74% on Reddit, it was 75% on Twitter. That is, they see a headline, and they vote. They don't investigate, they don't read the comments, they don't check out the, and this is including images. On Reddit, the images are sometimes like little expander things, even on Twitter as well. You guys click to expand. They don't even do that. They don't even expand the image to look at the image. 74% of the time, headline, vote. Which to me is just incredible. Now, I have to say that I'm guilty too, 68%. I'm guilty of it as well. And this is how misinformation spreads. It's all our fault. We don't investigate. We don't have time for that. We want someone to tell us what the news is, tell us what the information is, and then be done with it. So, also, most people don't read most things. There's 7% of all interactions on Twitter or on Reddit go to the first thing. And then it's 5%, and very, very rarely do people actually go to the second page. And this is before the redesign. So now there is no second page on Reddit and on Twitter, but there used to be. So most people don't read most things. So what does this all mean? So what do we do now? So we've recognized the problems. The problem is us, that we collectively and individually need to fix this by our behavior. Because your votes determine what your friends see on the news. We are the editors of our news feeds. We are the editors of the information that our society sees. We deem what is relevant, what is of high quality, through our votes. And that is a power and a responsibility that we need to start taking seriously, because just one vote has a huge impact, as we've seen. So what do we do now? So this is Tim's incomplete list of things that won't help, which I can tell you all the things that don't help. First off, fact-checking. Fact-checking is a wonderful thing to do in a limited set of cases, but most people don't check fact-checking websites. I know the folks at Snopes and at factcheck.org, they get maybe 1,000 hits a day. And these are the huge websites that purport to be the arbiters of truth. No one cares. They vote, and they don't care what the fact-checkers say. So fact-checking, it has a place, but it's not going to solve the problem. Censorship. If only Facebook or Google would downplay the fake news, if they just wouldn't show it. There's two things. First of all, we could give Facebook or Google that power to determine what is true and what is factually correct. I'm not willing to do that. And second of all, this is a moving target. What the fake news website of 2019 will not be the fake news website of 2020. The problems of 2020 will not be the problems 10 years hence. So the algorithmic solutions of just blocking websites is not going to help at all. It's not going to, it'll solve that one problem, but 10,000 more will pop up in its place. So censorship is going to be a tough one. Third, shaming. The easiest way to have a person not change their mind is to call them names. So if your friend on Facebook posts some BS about something, and you call them out on it, not only will they not change their mind, they will probably not like you anymore, and they will probably even become more entrenched into their own beliefs. It's really interesting. It's called the backfire effect in psychology, and you might know about this in your business classes, is that if you confront someone with facts, with evidence, they will not come to your side. They are likely instead to become more entrenched into their beliefs. It's a beautiful, scary, terrible psychology. But it's social media has it in spades. So shaming, and even factually presenting people with information, has found no effect in people's ability to believe in misinformation. So these three things. So what will help? What will work? Media literacy, I think. We need to understand the problem with the current state of social media, understand the power that you all have, collectively and individually, in the votes that you make, the retweets that you make, the likes that you give on social media, and to use that power judiciously. Read the articles, investigate the things that you share, because we all collectively are responsible for the information that we all see. So, also convince social media users to be more media savvy. You might talk to your friends about, hey, the power that you have in your votes. Let them know as well that we are all part of the solution. So with that, I think we have time for some questions. If you have any, please come see the microphones, and I'll be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was wondering, right here.
Raise your hand. Oh, thank you. Okay.
I was wondering if you found that the statistics around usership were consistent across demographics or age groups and regions, or if there was much variation on users' use or likelihood of upvoting or reading headlines.
Yeah, so we did find, the question was about usership and demographics. We did find that individuals who are non-digital native were worse at this. So those folks who, you don't necessarily have to be older. So there was a headline in the New York Times, I think a couple days ago, about older users spread more fake news. And while that is indeed true, really the problem is that people who did not grow up with the smartphone or non-digital natives, those are the ones I think who have I guess, are more apt to share fake news. And actually because of that, one of the concerns to think about, especially 10 years hence, is that about 3 or 4 billion people are currently online. In the next 5 or 10 years, the rest of the world is coming online. And when that happens, what online are we giving them? They're going to come online to this thing which has a potential for beauty, of just greatness, of you can, like I said before, you could answer any question you possibly could have, solve any problem, the sum total of human knowledge here in your hands. But when they come online, they see this mess of an ecosystem, and maybe it actually has bad consequences for these developing countries and these folks who are just not coming online. So it's a big problem. We are actually working with the State Department. We have a large grant from them to Notre Dame to work on this currently.
So if a small minority of users are driving this much change and are sort of disproportionately controlling the narrative, is there a way that we might leverage that fact and sort of operationalize the fact that, or help media outlets to inform the users, look, even though this thing appears important, the overwhelming majority has passed this headline by, did not click on it, or something like that. Use this sort of, the fact of that, that the masses are sort of bypassing thing as sort of the seeds of the overcoming this dynamic.
Yeah, so that's excellent. That's one thing that social media companies currently have a lot of secret sauce that goes into their algorithms. One of the things that I have been begging Reddit to do, Facebook does it to some extent, but begging Reddit to do was to look at not the number of votes, but instead the number of votes per number of views. Right? So if 10,000 people saw it, but only 4 people voted on it, that is worse than 4 people seeing it and 4 people voting on it. At the same time, 4 people, it's a trade secret, so maybe I'll get in trouble, but Facebook does not count your like unless you click on the link. It'll turn blue, but they don't count it. It doesn't go into the system because of this. So they're working on it. I will have to say, though, that Facebook and Reddit and Google there are good people at those companies working hard, but a lot of them are just trying to keep the lights on. They're just trying to keep the servers blinking. Most of the stuff is just hard disks crashing and pushing code to do some ads. But these are hard problems to solve. So, good question. Yes.
Could you comment on this week's events with the high school students in Covington and the protests with the various groups there in Washington?
That's a good question. Next question. I should, that's a tough one. So what ended up happening here was that so there's a shorter video that made the rounds and then really kind of indicted these individuals. And then there's a longer video that maybe tempered that a little bit. I don't know. I'm looking at when groups of people are trying to push some narrative. In this particular case, there was a Twitter account that was being pushed by a foreign country, a group in a foreign country that was circulating this shorter video that really indicted these individuals, these young school children, and they were taken down by Twitter. So in this particular case, I think it would have gotten popular either way, but in this case was an example where a foreign group was pushing a particular point of view. So yeah, that's the most recent example, and there'll be another one next week. I don't know what it'll be, and 10 years hence, I would imagine yet another example. But I'm a computer scientist. I am not, I do my best.
Yeah, so getting to the content of an actual post that's being pushed or upvoted, does your research confirm that any news is good news for those pushing it? Because I would think as a story that maybe a few people are pushing, 300 people for ISIS, as that becomes more popular, you have hundreds of millions who are opposed to that content that are now aware of it and acting contrary to its message or contrary to its propaganda. And I would just think that also is a powerful force for good. For example, I was pretty much unaware of the situation in Venezuela to the degree that it's now escalated to earlier than this week. If people in favor of socialism in Venezuela and the current movement are now pushing that content on social media, they've now angered me against them and many others. So is that still a benefit for them? And is any news good news, or how do you?
Yeah, so there's what's called the Streisand effect, where if you try to get out in front of something, or if you try to respond to something, then it raises its profile and then it snowballs even further than if you were to do nothing at all. So for business communications, do you guys talk about the Streisand effect? So the Streisand effect is where someone is accusing you of something terrible sometimes. They say AT&T or Verizon or Comcast they did this thing to me. And if they were to only ignore it, it would be one guy shouting in the woods, right, on social media, no big deal. But as soon as that company responds to it in their official capacity, then everyone sees that, oh, this is a thing, and then it blows up. And so by trying to respond to something often has worse outcomes than if you're doing nothing at all. I don't know if this particular thing answers your question, but as far as is all news good news, I think the same thing could happen here, right? So if people are in an uproar about ISIS, back when ISIS wasn't known, then we all know about ISIS. That means all of these people who are prone to this type of propaganda now hear about ISIS, and now we have 10,000 ISIS members. So there was that, oftentimes the fact check, for example, spreads the lie more than the initial story, right? And so it's an interesting thing even for fact checking. If you repeat the lie in the fact check, now you're propagating the lie. So how do you fact check an article? How do you say that a thing didn't happen without saying that some people believe a thing happened? I don't know the answer to that. I do know that there's a rule of thumb in social media that is that if the headline is a question, the answer is no. If the headline is a question, the answer is no. So remember that when you're trying to think of, share information and fact check information. Okay, other questions?
With these online media platforms, is it possible to have some sort of a reputation where you get some sort of a track record where you upvote reliable stories and then your upvote counts more? Is something like this a potential response to the problem?
Yes, that's really a good suggestion. Is there a reputation for like people whose votes are credible account for more? And it turns out we've tried that and it doesn't work. And we have tried that and it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is, well, for example, on Reddit, in order to post something to videos, the video subreddit, you have to have a certain previous karma level, which is a certain reputation. What ends up happening in that case is that it costs, instead of maybe $1, it'll cost $1.50 for someone to buy that account. And then you have a bunch of really credible accounts that you can just go and buy people and pay them $1 or $2 to upvote your account. And so what it does is it gives you a false sense of security. That only, if we say that credible people upvoted this, then we're ignoring the fact that these credible people can be bought. Right? One of the things that's really interesting is Facebook ran a study, and I think it's public now so I can talk about it. And they ran a study where they marked certain news as disputed. So there's a Facebook card, like you've all seen, it's a little card on your Facebook page, and then what they would do is they'd draw a red box around that card, and they say, this article is disputed. Meaning that we're not sure of its reliability. So what ended up happening? It turns out that in the people who were part of the study, the B group we call them, were more prone to share fake news than people who were not part of the study. The study had negative impact. And the reason was because the people who were in that study, they didn't believe the things that were disputed. They said, okay, this is disputed, it must be wrong. But the things that were not tagged, but were still wrong, they said, oh, it's not tagged, it must be true. When really, it just hadn't been fact-checked yet. And so what ended up happening is when the users ceded their higher order thinking skills to the algorithm, when the algorithm misses or just doesn't do a thing yet, then we had dire consequences. So all of the things that we've been trying so far have not succeeded in the ways that we had hoped. Which is why I'm going around and saying, use your higher order critical thinking skills to be good digital citizens. Because the algorithms, the things that we've been trying haven't been helping.
Thanks very much for being here today. We really appreciate it. As a fellow who teaches critical thinking, it seems to me that there's a kind of tripwire effect. I would assume that stories which are wrong but plausible would get more favorable reception. The fellow who says the UK does more trade with China than they do with the EU, I don't have immediate access to those figures if I'm an average person, and I would say, well, that it might be, maybe that's true. How does a story like Hillary Clinton running a child sex slave ring in the basement of a Washington pizza parlor, how does that even get off the ground? Of all the things I think she might do, that's not on the list, So I would think probability or plausibility might have some effect there, no?
I have no evidence to have a strong opinion one way or the other. I do know that anecdotally, someone went into that poor pizza shop and tried to shoot up a pizza shop based on this outlandish fake news story. 10,000 people joined ISIS because of the media that they were pushing. Right? It's incredible. So I would say almost matter-of-factly that if I say the Dow went down 10 points today and it actually went up, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Right? That seems factual. It's not outlandish. One of the things that we're trying to do is kind of have machine learning algorithms look at the story and look at the headline and look at the trends and stuff of it and try to say that this is a fake news story because of its signatures. And I'm not convinced that that's going to be helpful or useful. But as far as will it call someone to action to shoot up a place or to join ISIS, I don't have a good answer for you. I wish I did. No, sorry. But that was a good question from the instructor. I'm nervous now. So, thank you. Yes.
Hello, and thank you for speaking today. So my question to you kind of touched upon it, but so my mom just got a smartphone and now she's on Facebook, and like every
My condolences.
parent, they share all these crazy stories, and it's like, Mom, that's fake. What are some tips and tricks that you tell your friends and family to watch out for and kind of keep them from cycling this news and making sure they're being safe on the internet?
So what are some tips and tricks to tell the non-digital natives we should say? First is to tell them that the power that they have when they're sharing the fake news stuff, and also to remind them kind of that you wouldn't. This is a social interaction platform, and you wouldn't just say outlandish things, just baldly face false things to someone else in person. There's little difference between what the social interaction. If you're posting something fake online, you could say, hey, you're annoying me. This is not helpful. At the same time, I don't think that that's going to cause a whole lot of an effect. Again, if you shame someone, they're just going to turn on you. So I think what you could probably do is just tell them the stats and tell them how much their single vote matters, and educate them on this type of thing. But don't shame them. It really backfires when you do that. I think something that has worked in the past is that if you fact check something, if you actually give the Snopes to it, that has shown to work a little bit. And we're talking like 0.5% effect, but it's still, that's the best we have so far, is if you share this, if you Snope someone, if they share some BS article and you respond with the Snopes, they're like, okay, this is false. They'll leave it up, which isn't helpful, but that has had a small effect. Another thing you can do is be Socratic, is ask them a question, why do you think this? Or you ask them a question. It can't be shaming, it can't be judgmental, but that has also shown to have a very small, but it's the best we have so far. That's an excellent question. And probably a year or two I'll have a better answer for you.
Hi. So I just had a quick comment about, let's say there's a false news story, right? And whose responsibility, I guess, is it for that? Is it like the people with the votes, like the public? I see that we're coming from an angle where we're trying to discredit the public, right? So is there a system where we could negatively, not to push like negative impact, but like to negatively impact the writers of the story? So like if it's, because a lot of times there will be a retraction, but people have already read the headline and then that news spreads. But they'll put the retraction like 20 paragraphs down in the article, and people don't read the article anyway. People read the headlines. So I guess like my suggestion would be to have to disclose that this article is edited, or is there an angle where the news outlets could be more responsible?
Right, so this goes to credibility. So a news agency is only as good or as its credibility, right? There's some new startup sources are less credible, but if they break lots of accurate stories, then their credibility builds up. One of the things that we actually find when we do this, and this actually happened, this is an example I can give you. I was on CBS about 6 months ago because of a story that was breaking all across the United States, but it was tailored to specific local news stations. And so what they did is they actually planted this fake news story. It was about vigilante justice against pedophiles was the story. And it was Mishawaka man arrested for vigilante justice against pedophile. The same news story, this was at CBS9news.com or NBC9news.com. But if you go to NBC9news.com and if you're in El Paso, Texas, it'll say El Paso man and so on. If you're in San Francisco, they'll say San Francisco man. And they're pushing the same story over and over and over again. But it was one fake news story, and that site was up, this NBCnews.com, was up for about 9 months, pushing 9 months of really good stuff from the AP and from Reuters and from New York Times, and they had built up a really great credibility. All for this one activity where they're trying to push vigilante justice. And so that's a tough one, right? They had built up credibility, and it didn't take a whole lot because they weren't actually making their own content. But if you're well-resourced and well-funded, you can create a website, NBC9news.com, spend 9 months, and then your attack happens where we're trying to spread, vigilante justice. So it's a tough one. I have no answer for you on that. It's hard. Yeah. I'm sorry. Let's go up here.
Hi. Thanks for being here. My question is, seeing all you're saying about social behavior, how much has, say, social psychologists, behavioral psychologists been involved after these findings to try to determine or do experiments also understanding how maybe some of these behaviors can be modified in the future, or educating new generations so that we can better tackle this?
Yes, so we're running this study right now. The difference between now and 80 years ago was that we have this new platform, this social media platform, where fake news is not a new thing. We've been studying it for a long time. Actually, have you guys seen, what's the movie with Mr. Smith Goes to Washington? Have you seen that one? Yeah, so there's a handful, maybe. Jimmy Stewart, he's a senator from Arizona. That movie is like an iconic American movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. That movie is about fake news. Set in the 1920s, 30s, right? That's movies about fake news. And it's not a new problem. We study it now. The problem now is that a story can fly and make it in front of 1 billion people's eyes in a half hour. That's the power of new social media. Now, what we're doing, so the reason I said I'll have better answers in a year is we're running a study right now in Indonesia during their election, which is in April. And we're surveying people currently. We're going to run a media literacy campaign in the Indonesian media to see if it has an effect and what types of media literacy campaigns have what type of effect. And so in a year or so, I'll have better answers for you with the different behavior and the psychology and, is it images or videos, or we have, educational memes is what we're doing first, right? That's what we're going to try to see if it has an impact. I don't know the answer yet, but I'll let you know soon. Here and then just two.
Would it be helpful if a reporting system is established and if people report the news is fake or biased, the editor will remove them from the front page?
Yeah, so if I understand your question is, would it be helpful if we had a reporting system where you could report fake news and have some moderators remove it from the front page? Certainly, that's kind of that's what we have right now. Is if something is making the rounds, you can report it as untrusted or disputed. You can, and it's the same checkbox as spam or graphic or not safe for work type stuff. And it works. I don't know. That's also ripe for abuse too, right? That's like a super downvote where you try to downvote something, but most people aren't going to vote or rate or turn something in. Maybe a handful will. It's also abused a lot. You hear oftentimes on YouTube of videos that are taken down for different violations, and then in a few days later put back up. Because the algorithm took it down because everyone was in a coordinated way attacked this channel. Everyone reported it for spam or something. The algorithm took it down, and then it had to be restored manually. So it's another system that we can abuse. So I wish I had a better answer for you.
So my question is resolved around, is around the fact that as fake news is being perpetuated, and this has been happening on social media for a few years now, we're starting to see people get more polarized with their opinions, right? And so people are moving into certain fields of political opinion, et cetera. And now that they've been brought over there, even maybe through fake news,
they're kind of in that echo chamber where that's all they hear, and because that's what they've liked or upvoted, that's all that they see. What do you see out there in the field? Do you see that there's still an ability to influence people's opinion, or are you just going to have Streisand effects? And 10 years from now, is the landscape going to be completely polarized where there's no moderates, where you don't have anyone in the middle to really buy their votes or try to get them to your side? It's already decided.
Yeah, so maybe to summarize your question, say, are we going to become in 10 years so polarized that truth is irrelevant and only opinion matters? I would say no. I push back on the idea of echo chambers. So we've all maybe heard of echo chambers in the news media where you follow on Twitter certain individuals or certain news agencies and you never see the other side. The conservatives follow conservative news and liberals follow liberal news and Christians follow Christian news and atheists follow atheist news. That's a thing. And then you never see the other side. That has been reported widely. There's been results in recent months and years that have disputed those types of claims. It turns out that most of us, and not just us, ivory tower elite academics at Notre Dame, but actually most of the individuals, most people on social media actually go to NBC and Fox and CNN and I don't know. People are savvy media consumers. Now they may have a preference for, I like the opinion that is on this channel or on this news site, but very few people actually bury their heads. They know what is happening because they actually will go to different websites. Most people do. Now the opinions that they interact with, certainly there's an echo chamber there, but people are actually pretty savvy media consumers. But what ends up happening, individuals are smart, groups of people are dumb. And that's a thing that we see over and over and over again. And the reason is because of this kind of group think and these group effects that you can study in sociology. That there's this tragedy of the commons that ends up happening. That a few individuals can have major impact. And that's seen throughout. So maybe having time for one more question here. And then we have to go. Go ahead.
Thanks, Professor. I was wondering if you could comment on, maybe people who grew up during the digital age but would consider themselves like social media skeptics. So they would prefer to be, for example, that woman in the crowd observing the royal wedding and just experiencing it in real life, and just kind of dislike this compulsion to always feel pressured to post and to like and to share. Do you think, kind of the ship has already sailed too far and like it's just infeasible from a social perspective to kind of stay more or less off the grid? I have this conversation with friends of mine, millennials all the time. Do you think that's possible, or do you think, it's at this point you kind of have to buy in to some degree to stay relevant culturally?
Yeah. For businesses, certainly, like you have to have a Facebook profile. You have to have a Twitter profile. If you're a business, you have to be listed on Google. You have to. That's the current Yellow Pages. You have to be on Google to be relevant. Unless you have, some neighborhood shop or something. I think there actually is a bit of a pullback already occurring. Facebook is losing market share tremendously. Twitter hasn't turned a profit in, I think, its existence. Until last quarter, finally it had a profit. So we'll see what the future holds, but I think that we're going to revert a little bit, and we'll overshoot, and then the hype will die down, and it'll become yet another kind of utility that we have, and we'll figure it out. So I want to end on a hopeful note. I am actually pretty hopeful that we will figure this out, that we're going to grow up in it, and we're going to figure it out, and it'll become yet another problem that we've kind of gotten to deal with, and we figured out in the next 10 years. So with that, thank you very much for coming.
Tim, thank you very much. We deeply appreciate you being here. Two small factoids that I find encouraging. One, I lived and taught in London for the first half of last year, and one of the facts that came out of social media in London is that 25% of all UK citizens have, under the age of 25, so it's 25 under 25, have closed their Facebook accounts. which I considered encouraging. The other thing I thought was encouraging this morning is I arrived here and discovered I left my phone at home. So I'm fine. I'm really good with that.
But so they closed their Facebook account but opened an Instagram account.
Well, that
That's
Facebook
the-
account is still there. They just can't get to it. Right?
Well, thank you.
On behalf of the faculty, students, and staff of the Mendoza College of Business, Tim, thank you very much.